Hi, I'm Mike Blume, and this is the second in a series of videos concerning end-time Bible prophecy, exposing the errors of a lot of the modern sensationalistic viewpoints and showing what the Bible is actually trying to say. At this time, I want to go to Matthew chapter 24, which is heralded as the end-time prophecy chapter in the Gospels. And in this chapter, Jesus speaks about end events and the end of the world and so forth. Actually, in order to understand chapter 24, we've got to go into the last few verses of chapter 23. And in those verses, Jesus was rebuking Jerusalem for having rejected him. Now, in Matthew 21, Jesus rode into Jerusalem and heralded himself as the Messiah of Israel. And the Jews began accepting and praising and worshiping him, but the Pharisees came along, shut them up, and in turn, they ended up turning Jesus away. And ever since Matthew 21, Jesus spoke parable after parable after parable about a people rejecting him that should have accepted him, and another people getting him and coming into the kingdom instead. And the only other parables Jesus made in these chapters was concerning people who were faithful, who had better remain faithful, lest they be judged as rejecting Israel would be judged. At the end of chapter 23, Jesus rebukes the Pharisees, tells them that all the blood that had been shed since the time of Abel's death, way back in Genesis chapter 4, would be required upon Jerusalem and Israel because they would reject Jesus Christ. Now that is unprecedented judgment, requiring the death of every person unrighteously slain on one group of people in Christ's day. That's how serious their rejection of Jesus really was. And then he says in verse 36, "Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens, and you would not? And behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth, till you shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." And then chapter 24 commences, and says, "And Jesus went out, departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple." Now notice here that Jesus had just told the Jews Jerusalem would be destroyed. He was ready to protect them as a hen protects her children when a storm comes or when a beast comes, and Jerusalem would not accept it. And then he says, your house is going to be left desolate. So when the disciples showed Jesus the great buildings of the temple, they obviously had in mind what Jesus had just said about their house being left desolate. And Jesus said to them, "See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, "Tell us, when shall these things be? When will the temple be destroyed? When will every stone not be left unturned? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" And let me pause there and say, when they said end of the world, they did not mean the end of earth. They did not mean the end of the planet. The word world in Greek is from the term ahion. It means age. Our English word eon is a transliteration of ahion. And so they were asking about the end of the age, not the end of the planet. They knew that for unprecedented judgment to come upon Jerusalem, all the blood shed since the time of Abel, the guiltiness of that blood, put upon that generation. Jesus contrasted their ancestors from them by saying all the unrighteous murders, all of that blood guiltiness is going to come upon this generation. Jesus was giving such grave warning of judgment that the disciples said, when's this age going to end? There's obviously an age coming to an end here. Judgment that has never been performed before is going to be performed. It's going to end an age. And so what's the sign of your coming? And what's the end of the age? And Jesus goes on and he says, "Take heed that no man deceive you." He didn't say 2,000 years from now people had better take heed that no man deceive them, because this is when the end is going to come. No, he said you. He talked to the people standing right in front of him and told them they would have to take this warning. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye, not people thousands of years later. He said, you people standing here are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. He didn't say the people in the future, 2,000 years from now, don't need to be troubled because the end is not yet. He's saying you people are going to see wars and rumors of wars. But that's not the sign of the end. The end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted. If you were telling me that I would be delivered up to be afflicted when I was asking you, what's going to happen when the end occurs? I wouldn't be thinking of people thousands of years after my decease. You see, futurism, dispensationalism makes nonsense out of these scriptures. He's not talking about our day who will see these things, our people who will see these things. It's talking about that people in that day 2,000 years ago. He goes on and talks about the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds, and I'm going to have a whole video directed totally to that. But then he says in verse 34, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. He didn't say some of these things will be fulfilled in this generation. He said all these things I've just spoken to you about, including the temple destruction. If this generation is talking about our day, when these things will be fulfilled, and this generation we're living in won't pass till all these things be fulfilled, as dispensationalists and prophecy teachers are trying to tell us, then why did he include the temple destruction amongst all these things? The temple was destroyed in AD 70 in the 1st century. So whoever was living to see the temple destruction would see all those things Jesus listed, which is another powerful proof that these verses do not concern you, they do not concern me, they concern the 1st century believers of Jesus Christ. And when he told them this generation, he was referring to the one standing right in front of him, their generation. We've got to realize, when was this written? It was written 2,000 years ago. To whom was it written? It was written to people standing right there. It was spoken to them, written concerning that era. And Jesus said, this generation, meaning that one 2,000 years ago. Folks, all those things happened in the 1st century. Jesus doesn't say anything about a resurrection occurring from the dead there. And we're going to deal directly with that as well in another video. But note right now, Matthew 24 is entirely fulfilled. And we will deal with each of these issues in Matthew 24 that will come to your mind as a question eventually in our series. But stay tuned and keep watching. God bless you.